Okay guys, you're not going to see my face too much in this one. I'm sure that's not going to upset anybody. These are kind of heavy because they're full of water, so I just want to show you where they sit, and then we'll go back inside real quick. So my glass carboys, which are full of water and a little bit of iodophor, which is a commercial quality sterilant that just keeps them ready to go. I can drain those out, rinse them real good, put them upside down inside this little dryer here, and they'll drip dry and they'll be ready to go when I need them. And the big old bucket. This is it. This is all you need to brew beer. One of these buckets. You can see it's got a lid. It's got that hole on top. I can put my airlock in. This one actually does have a hole on the bottom for a bottling valve as well, so I can use it as a bottling bucket as well. 2 of my 3 buckets are like that. Inside here I've got water and a weak bleach solution. Everything's been scrubbed and cleaned, and then they are in here, and now they're pretty much the same thing. They're ready to go. Whenever I need them, all I got to do is rinse them off real good with hot water as I can stand. See your big spoon in there. Get a big plastic spoon. They're easier to clean than wood. Got the lid on. That just sits there until I need it. I've got 2 other buckets, and I'm not really using the glass right now. My IPA is going to go in the glass not for another couple of days, so it's just sitting there waiting to be used. Okay. You're going to need a turkey fryer if you're going to boil all 6 gallons. I boil 6 gallons, but if you're going to boil that much, you're going to need a turkey fryer. If you're only going to boil 2 gallons or 3 gallons, you might be able to get away with your stove. There's my brew pot. It's 7.5 gallons, porcelain-coated steel. I brew 6 gallons at a time to start with, so plenty of room for a good rolling boil inside a 7.5 gallon pot. My next pot is going to be a stainless steel 9-gallon brew pot. But those things cost about $100–150, so I'm not really ready to go there yet since I just bought the house you're looking at. There's the other bucket. This is the oldest bucket I have. This thing's, I don't even know how old it is. I've had it for probably 5 years. My brother-in-law used it before that. And you'll see it's still snowy white because I clean it. And I soak it in bleach when I'm not using it, which gets rid of brown beer stain, gets rid of all kinds of nasty germs and blah, blah, blah. First thing you're going to really need to do, really the first thing you need to do is start saving bottles. It means when you're at the next party, any beer bottle, I prefer brown glass long necks, that is not a screw cap, save, rinse out, set aside. Your friends will actually help you out once they find out that you're making beer. This is a bottle scrubber, so you can hook this thing up. It's got a standard garden thread, just like your garden hose. You put the pressure will close the valve. When you put a bottle on it, it's going to push down and it's going to just come shooting out of there like crazy, and it'll knock any crud up inside the bottle out. But if you've rinsed them out well as soon as you're done with them and stored them, especially if you store them upside down, they should be pretty clean and pretty easy to deal with at that point. I do use iodophor, which is a commercial quality sterilant like I mentioned before. Here's our capper. Let me set this down and I'll show you how the capper works. You put the cap on top of the bottle, right? Then this thing is going to grip on to the neck of the bottle, and it comes down, grabs the cap, and crimps it against it, just like you've seen in any beer bottle. And then a real quick pop, and it'll open up and come back off. That leaves caps. Caps are just caps. Buy caps. You need about 50 per batch. The ones I buy are the ones with the oxygen-absorbing material inside, just because it's better for the beer. Oxygen in the beer isn't good. We've got hop bags and grain bags. The bigger ones for holding the grain, the smaller ones for hops. The reason I use bags is because it keeps that vegetable matter out of the beer for the most part. You're going to strain a lot of stuff out this way. If you don't, you're going to end up with just a lot of crud in your beer. That's not necessarily bad, but in the long run, you're going to want to strain that out. So the bags are a really good way to go. Here's a three-piece airlock. This exact airlock is the one I recommend. All right. You're going to put your airlock in the cork. The cork goes in the bottle. Number 2 piece here, let's see if that stands up. Number 2 piece here is going to drop down inside there, and then come flying out. Let me do that. Sorry, guys. Okay. Now there's a line, which is right here. Once you got it to this point, you're going to fill it up with either a sanitizing solution, or what I use is 80% alcohol vodka. That way CO2 can get out of here, it'll bubble out, but nothing else can get its way back in. Cap goes on top. Cap's got little air holes in the top to kind of, you know, allow that pressure out. If you get too much pressure, it will blow your airlock out. But when you're using a bucket, you can imagine you've got so much more headspace up here above your 5-gallon mark. Now, obviously, that means there's a lot more surface area for the beer to come in contact with air, but at first, you're going to get all that foam and gunk and CO2 coming out, and that's kind of going to protect that surface. Now, what I do is after the first week, I'll transfer from the bucket to the glass carboy, and obviously in the top of a glass carboy, you've got a real small amount of surface. But in the beginning, you'll have to worry a lot less about blowout with all this nice space up here to protect you for the foam getting all the way out. Will it happen? Yeah, sure. Actually, my IPA was up to here, so it foamed over and blew my airlock out. But, you know, live and learn. It's a food quality nylon valve that goes right in the bottom of the bottling bucket. Like I say, you can just leave this thing in and use it as a fermenting bucket. It's really handy that way, actually, because once it's done fermenting and you want to transfer it to your bottling bucket if you have two, you can just transfer it via this valve. Just open the valve slowly, let the beer slowly run through a tube, which you should run down to the bottom of your other bucket. You don't want the stuff to splash at that point. Here's a bottling tube, right, with a valve on the end. Now, this can plug right into here, or you can have a flexible tube, which might make it a little easier. The way this thing works is, when the bottle touches the bottom, the beer comes out. As soon as you drop the bottle a little bit, the beer stops. And then when you remove the tube, it'll be displacing about as much beer as you need for some headroom at the top of the bottle. You will not need, but you really should have, a hydrometer, which will tell you the gravity of the beer. Before you put the yeast in it, measure it. Before you bottle it, measure it again. You subtract the original reading from the second reading, and whatever that sum is, multiply by 131, and that'll give you your alcohol content. There's instructions with the bottle. It does read perfectly at 60 degrees. So at 70 or at 80, every 10 degrees you go up above 60, it will read off a little bit. And I believe it's 0.002003 for every 10 degrees. So you have to make a little adjustment for that if you're reading it above 60. Now that's really it. In fact, let me put this thing down. Okay, a turkey fryer, a pot to boil the water in, a bottling bucket, basically a fermenter, a plastic fermenter. If you want to buy a carboy, buy a carboy. I would get both. I use both almost every time. The water in your city supply, if it tastes good, if you can make ice with it, it doesn't make things taste weird, use it. If it's good, use it. If it's not, if it has off flavors, if it's really super high in minerals, and although the minerals in water in Dublin and stuff like that are pretty high too, but you can use bottled water, obviously. Don't use the purified, or not the purified, but the stuff they boiled out. Just regular purified drinking water is great. You can use that. Like I say, I just use my tap water. Water here's fine. Put the water in the pot. So let's see. Pot, turkey fryer, fermenting bucket, hydrometer. You're going to need the 3-piece airlock. I really suggest you get some hop bags. You can just throw the hops right in. But what I do is I go ahead and I put my grain in the big bag and I put my hops in the little bag, and that strains a lot of that stuff out, just makes it easier. When you're doing a two-step, when you're going first to the bucket and then to the bottle, you're going to leave a lot of that crud behind anyway. So it depends on how much you want to get into. You're going to need 50 bottles. You're going to need to have them cleaned. You're going to need enough caps to cap those 50 bottles. I get a little bleach, little bottle of bleach, weak bleach solution. Should hardly smell at all. I use the Ida4 a lot. It's not very expensive. That's about it. That's, you know, if you go online and go to a beer place and say basic kits, it won't have too much more than that. Maybe a cheap book on how to do it. You'll get a bucket. You might even get a capper if you're lucky. You might get some caps. You might get a hydrometer, although probably not. You don't really have to have a hydrometer. A good plastic spoon. Tubing, you almost don't even need, really. If you're going to transfer from the bucket to the bottle, like I say, that's real handy because you don't want the stuff to splash at that point. During the boil, you almost can't hurt it. Wow, if I've forgotten anything, I guess I probably should have wrote a script, shouldn't I? So we'll see what comes up when we boil beer next time. All right, see you later, guys. Send any questions you got.